mounting,
motorboating,
and child death.
This is Final Fantasy 16. Well, Kyle, you said it all.
That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know.
I'm heading into this being like, some folks are just going to accuse me of trying to placate the Final Fantasy audience.
I mean, doesn't placating only work when it's bad? When you pretend a bad thing is good? I think we're pretending a good thing is good here. At least from what we've seen. I don't think
we are pretending. Yeah, that's yeah. I don't. I'm waiting for a hiccup in the Garrett becomes a useless Final Fantasy fan arc that I appear to be on, but today is not that day. We have played the Final Fantasy 16 demo, which is the entire prologue to the actual game. And yes, they're letting us keep that save and carry it into the launch of the game so we don't have to replay through the prologue if we don't want to.
It's a big game. I mean, this took us, what, 3 hours? 2 hours if you were like mainlining offline, not paying attention. I think it could have been
an easy 2 hours if you just mainlined it. Yeah. If you weren't playing with a friend and like talking about, how things are affecting you or trying to jingle the keys while your other friend reads city explainers.
That was a good feature. Wait, we should talk about that in features.
We don't have a section for features.
We should talk about that in gameplay because that was a nice feature.
Let's just get into it because the thing off the top of my head is the tone of Final Fantasy 16. So at the time of recording this, we still haven't become current in Final Fantasy 14, but we did just finish Shadowbringers and we're staring down the barrel of Endwalker for our first time ever playthrough of Final Fantasy 14. Yes, I can hear you yelling stall. Knowing that the same team worked on this, it comes with that like expectations. It's the dirty or wonderful word depending on who you are and how you let them affect your enjoyment of the media that you consume. It's not even a media blitz. It's just like a constant media marathon for Final Fantasy 16. It hasn't stopped, I feel like, dude. I feel like every time I sneeze, I open my eyes and there's a new Final Fantasy 16 trailer. We've heard a lot about this game before we've had a chance to play it. A lot of people had a chance to play this game before we had a chance to play it. There's opinions abound. There's all kinds of previews abound. So I had a lot of expectations going in. We've all read it. We've seen that article. It's been shared everywhere that the team was required to play Game of Thrones. The team was required to watch Game of Thrones. I think up through season 4, which means it was still good. I expected it to be a little more adult in theme than Final Fantasy 14, but not this. Like there's a dude who just gets misted by a rock in like the first minute of this game.
It's the horrors of war plus the collateral damage of kaijus, icons battling each other, and on that level of gods fighting, our little foot soldiers don't matter so much. In fact, there's a lot of eviscerating that happens later on.
But also what surprised me was how well I feel it blends with everything. Because it's not like the whole game is extremely dark and dour. It's dealing with very serious themes, but there's also what I see as like now, someone who didn't grow up playing Final Fantasy, is like kind of the...
We're ready to depart, my lord.
Kind, uplifting, kind of cheesy characters. Like these side characters that show up and you're like, oh, you're a little cornball, aren't you? And it kind of brightens the mood. And like, there's still a lot of that around the edges and in and out of the scenes of just the prologue here, which makes me believe that it continues throughout. Also, I've seen like 17 headlines about USP didn't want Moogles to be in this game. Oh my God, let's cancel Final Fantasy 16. But that makes me believe Moogles are in this game. So I think there's still a bit of Final Fantasy whimsy that's alive and well in Final Fantasy 16, Kyle.
Whimsy matched with that Game of Thrones tone. You can see it everywhere. Not only just the kind of rigorous medieval structures that you have and class systems and the highers and the lowers and the haves and have-nots.
And the bottoms and the tops, because there's a lot of sexiness going on in FF16.
Well, where there is death, there is also life. It is a demo. It's a short snippet of a much larger game, but because of the trust we have in that team from experiencing Final Fantasy XIV and so much of that game, It's very easy to enter this and just accept and take in what the story is telling you. Such as the king, he's there on his throne, he has no pillow. Ooh, that means it's an uncomfortable seat. He rules with a great burden. And that sort of subtext is rich throughout here. But if you're familiar with Game of Thrones, if you're familiar with Attack on Titan, you might be able to pick out the more obvious lines this is going to be going down. The story, I don't think, is going to blow anyone's mind with how complicated and far-fetched it might be. It is going to hit very rhythmic tones that you've seen in a lot of TV shows and a lot of anime, but that allows for a exuberance that takes what could just be a sad bummer of a story into something fun.
It sets itself apart and elevates itself once the icons come out, where it's just like, oh, it's all the things I like about the things you just mentioned, except Attack on Titan. I hate that anime. Throwing shade. I know it was advertised, but I wasn't expecting to come out of this being reminded of more modern Godzilla movies and Pacific Rim, which I very much was. This cinematography going on in this game, especially where it pertains to icons, like they're all the what I would call traditional tricks in the book, which I love. Like there's very natural camera movements that sell the size and the weight and the inertia of these massive monsters. And to me, that's, you know, we literally just turned the stream off like 10 minutes ago. That's what's sticking with me after this was like, ooh, this is another, you know, gritty, you know, similar to prestige television, very mature drama that I can sink my teeth into. I love these types of shows on TV until the final seasons of Game of Thrones. But what is really unique about it is that extra layer of extremely bombastic and operatic Final Fantasy boss fights. You want to talk about the graphics?
It looks great. It's a great looking game. Like, people touch each other and the fabric moves and interacts with one another. There's weight on the steps. The animations look solid. There was an army that clashed and nobody turned into random sprites. The whole thing, the battles going in the background, did not lose quality as you moved through it. It looked like it was actually being rendered, and at no point did I see during my demo playthrough a tree clip in when the camera moved to a new scene.
No, the cutscenes are basically flawless. There's a couple small touches I noticed that seemed, for a game of this fidelity, a little lacking, like interaction with the ground just in general. Like, I'm not seeing the blades of grass interact with feet at all. And we were splashing around in a puddle in a swamp, and it was the most like standard water physics I've seen in a little while. It looks freaking fantastic. I also have a 4090 and would kind of rather play it on my computer. That's like my only thing. My only thing coming close to a critique is that I don't want to turn it off of the fidelity mode because it looks really good, but the frames drop in fidelity mode.
Particularly in the big icon battles, there were a couple little skips that happened, and you're going to run into your usual move through the crack, crouch under the thing, hold open a door. It's just what we do today.
That doesn't bother me. I don't know why everyone's so mad about that suddenly. It's like we're still doing it. Everyone wouldn't shut up about Ragnarok, which I also thought was kind of overrated. And that you're still crawling through every crevice on Earth in that game. There's the gameplay, which I would just give a resounding as advertised. I don't play Bayonetta. I haven't played modern Devil May Cry games. I grew up with Devil May Cry. That is a game I grew up with. I stopped at 3. Didn't get past that. Haven't played the modern ones. You have, though.
I have, yeah.
We haven't done the combat demo yet, as we were more interested in seeing what the story has to offer. But to me, as an old school Devil May Cry fan, the thing that felt missing from the prologue is an uppercut with your sword to start an air juggle.
Yes, it wasn't as air juggly at this phase. The dodge felt great. It was a really good dodge. They had a counter system that came into play. You have your quick time events. All of that felt really good, but I think the part that interested me the most coming from the Final Fantasy XIV team is that the numbers looked great. I don't like the numbers in Final Fantasy XIV. They don't pop. They don't energize me. And these numbers, They look good. They're good numbers. It's a dopamine hit.
You didn't play around with it because you're just too cool for school. But I played around with the rings, mostly because in games where it's not an option to toggle it on or off, I love when the game slows down right before it hits about to land. I love it. And this game is so freaking stylish that, like, I kind of think this might be how I play the game. It really just, for me, you want to talk about triggering a dopamine hit. Just seeing the world like slow, like, and then you hit it, and then it's like they do the speed ramping so well. To me, it's like, I realize it's there to make the game easier, but to me, it also just makes the game look cooler and gives me like another like little moment in every single battle and every single fight with every single monster that I have to appreciate the visual fidelity of the game, because it slows down and you're like, oh, I look so cool, I need to dodge, and then you're out. Also, I loved that they gave me a ring where it's just like, pop a potion, go. I'm like, I've never given a crap about potion management. Yeah, sure, turn that on, let's go.
You still get that slowdown on the back of a dodge, but I could see that being pretty damn cool.
It's a big difference.
This is a iframe-based dodge. You are invincible for a short frame, but what really matters to me is the hitbox. And that was probably my biggest concern going into this. Does your dodge work? Do you have a parry mechanic? But more, is your monster model actually represented in 3D space? And it was. I can confirm in a huge deal for me that it was. When the Morbo raised up its tentacle and swung to the right, you had to dodge to the left and through it, otherwise you'd find yourself hit on the back of that swing. It mattered. It allowed you multiple avenues for dodging. You could jump over that if you wanted to instead. I assume a Final Fantasy game is going to be packed with iconic monsters and all kinds of crazy big stuff. That means that this is actually going to be to a crafted quality. It's going to make the action side of this RPG work.
You're trying real hard not to call it an action RPG, aren't you?
Well, yeah, that's a different game. That's a very different game.
It's an RPG with action.
The stagger system's all right. It's serving a purpose. It's to break up the monotony of just the wild hits you're doing on these enemies between dodges. It allows you to have a little movie moment where you can calmly execute your best combo or an ability you unlock. Speaking of which, there's loot, but it's down to 3 slots. Like, this is not going to be a full management simulator. You have a sword, a bracer, and what was the last one? Was it a necklace? What was that last one?
I think it was a necklace, and then you have all your ring slots, but that's like if you want to make the game easier. Those are like assistive slots. Which, dude, coming off of Ragnarok, which like again, like kind of fell a little flat for me, like, and a big thing, and honestly, both God of War games, because I love the God of War 2018, absolutely stellar game, but both of those, I don't give a crap, and I feel like it's weighted down by its loot system. Like, that's not what I come to God of War for. Not everything needs that deep of a layer of RPG. I just give me talent trees, let me unlock new abilities. That's all I care about. Kratos is Kratos. I don't need Kratos in weirdly shiny elemental armor. So for this game to kind of like remind me a little bit of God of War, but also Devil May Cry and kind of the way the combat plays out, and then to like be like, yeah, we have a simplified loot system, that's really attractive to me.
If you're a fan of Lock On, maybe from Ocarina of Time, maybe you're a Dark Souls fan, it's pretty good. Cycling between enemies is a little difficult for how many things appear on the battlefield, but because they all go down so fast as this more action-based game, it's not really going to burden you to just run in, unlocked it, and then save your lock-in for the big boss moments.
Yeah, speaking of big boss moments, that's the other part of the gameplay that impressed me. We kept hearing about the icon battle system, right? And like I was like, is it just going to be a big, like, quick time event? And it's not. A decent amount on rails, but I found it to be just the right amount of interactive, because there's a push and pull, right? You can have extremely interactive but not a cinematic, or you can have extremely cinematic but not particularly interactive. I think they found a really happy medium here, because a part of, like, hi everybody, didn't grow up playing Final Fantasy except for like 10. And like the memes, before we even had the word memes back then, was always like, Final Fantasy, oh, they look amazing, but they're just like movies that have turn-based, gameplay in between. Oversimplification. I also had a lot of friends who didn't agree with that and loved Final Fantasy. But that's how we were doing it. But it was famous for the visual fidelity and the cutscenes and just how beautifully it presents its story. Like, even me, somebody who didn't grow up as a Final Fantasy fan, I was very aware of that reputation, that like this game presents the story in a beautiful way. And that's how I felt coming out of these icon battles, was like, whoa, I feel like I'm still getting that Final Fantasy cutscene polish in a much more interactive package. And it's all coming down to taste, right? But I really enjoyed it.
There was your fire button, there was a dodge, and you moved the thumbstick in order to aim with a general kind of assisted lock-on with it. To me, it felt like Panzer Dragoon, the old Xbox game I loved. This did have an opportunity to fail. I did not hit my enemy enough and had a beautiful death at the hands of Ifrit.
There was a moment where something different happened and you weren't sure what to shoot at. I'll back my boy up here, even though I did it right the first time.
But it wasn't a quick time gauntlet of misery. It was just enough to make the movie interactive.
It really for me, and it's something I hear you talk about so much in other games, not in Final Fantasy XIV, but whenever we talk about action games, you love a good parry, you love a good dodge, and to me, this dodge in this game feels really crispy, really satisfying, and it's even there during the icon battles, which at least the one we preview in the prologue is mechanically simple. For me, it's like just landing a good dodge. It made me feel good every single time I did it. It made the icon battles really land with some impact, and I liked it because there's still a lot of cutscenes. Like if you like Final Fantasy for the kind of I'm going to play some and then I'm going to put the controller down when a cutscene comes up, there's still plenty of that. But as someone who who's totally down for a little more gameplay, I really enjoyed what they're doing here with the icon battles. The story's super mature. There's really no way around it. Like it does feel extremely
you cock
adult and we talk about the narrative getting pretty mature and adult in Final Fantasy XIV, but this feels adult in the way like a lot of people who are like, can my kid watch this HBO show? No, that's the way we mean adult. There's not like so far full on nudity, but the violence is grotesque and the sexual themes are right out the gate.
I think it sets an excellent tone for itself. And it's not being edgy, which is you go too far and you're trying to have that shock value. If you're reading into the subtext, watching the story, maybe even pressing the button to pop up the optional lore of all the background nations and everything else, you can infer a lot of the incoming deaths. If you've seen a movie before, these deaths probably won't be knocking your socks off, but they are well done. And in that way, it respects its maturity.
Not in your defense, you were calling everyone's going to die throughout the course of our playthrough. Although you ended up being pretty much everyone dies.
I misfired a little bit on the two bros out in the swamp. I thought they were going to poison you or something like that, but...
Yes, but they're dead. They're dead.
And it was purposefully trying to mislead me. It was constantly setting that tone of something's wrong. You just don't know it yet. Something's going on here.
Yeah, I like how it sets it up. We start in the future briefly, and we meet two, at least at this point in the story, unnamed characters that are like the avatar of an icon. They can channel the power of an icon, and that leads to this game's version of Titan and Shiva showing up and throwing down. And Shiva's about the size I'm used to Shiva being from Final Fantasy XIV, but Titan is truly gargantuan. We're talking like new North American developed Godzilla movie giant. Just unnaturally large. I enjoyed just being thrown into that, but I don't think I would have been lost if I was coming to this as like a first time Final Fantasy player. Like I think it does plenty through showing and telling.
Well, and their world is well defined. There's a lot of heraldry. There's different armors. There's different symbols for the different nations. We talk about them sometimes. We also have visual distinction between our two icons that are battling. One is clearly a big rock dude. One is an ice lady. It's easy to tell even in the hectic moments of battle what's going on, who's who. And I really appreciate they didn't go full Michael Bay Transformers on these models. Like they are crunchy in certain areas, but they have moments of distinction for their silhouette. So you don't lose the through line. Even in a fire-on-fire battle, you can still tell what the hell's going on.
That's a good point. I think there was like one moment when there was like fire and rubble falling towards me with Ifrit where I was like, is it time to dodge? But for the most part, I thought it read visually quite well. The icons look friggin' amazing. And again, that's the extra layer that I really enjoy. So, we leave whatever's going on in the future. We go back to the past. Immediately have a question of like, wait, where did Clive's face tattoo go? And then you meet some folks and realize there's a caste system and one of them has a face tattoo. And it's like, oh, foreshadowing. Shit, how's Clive going to end up lower than his current station, which seems to be like very high ranking, if not the highest caste of soldier. He keeps referring to himself as a shield, even though Kyle, I have yet to see a shield in this game.
For me, when we started getting introduced to that town, that's where I got my BioWare moment. BioWare's been struggling for a long time to keep me, and anytime I play one of their games, I'm always a little defensive. Everything was rich with that subtext. You could immediately start putting this world together, and they have a deeply planned out world. What they choose to do with it, that story, sometimes stories flop, but the world itself is very well crafted.
It feels, again, grounded. Like I grew up thinking Final Fantasy games were all extremely over the top, very, quote unquote anime. Haha, it's a meme.
The voice acting's great. Like these are British people doing the medieval thing. And it works. Even the kids, the kids can make or break a scene. The kid's
actual
doing great.
Kid, not
actual child.
Not
yes,
character in Final Fantasy 14 that eventually gets a voice and is clearly an older woman doing a kid's voice. No spoilers for 14 here, but you know what I'm talking about.
Not the Ash Ketchum lady, not the lady that plays Jimmy Neutron. Like a legit child is rocking this kid and doing a great job.
I was very happy with the voice acting and also the breadth of it. We both went and clicked on some just rando NPCs in town that had chat boxes over them, and it's not a chat box that you read. It's fully voice acted. I'm into the characters, dude. I'm into this story that they've set up here. This is absolutely yes, I've seen stories start like this before, but this is all archetypes and tropes that I love the kingdom falling in the middle of the night, the child, the prince being woken up by a trusted guard, be like, something's wrong, we're under attack, they're coming for the kingdom or whatever. Dune, The Witcher, I don't know, X-Men 2. I'm here for this kind of shit. And it absolutely pops off and delivers. Also, Torgal. I don't want to be another person beating the Torgal drum, but that is one cute puppy.
And I love the giant, basically robots. This is the same drama you'll have in your favorite mecha. This is the same drama, really spot on for Attack on Titan. If you enjoyed Attack on Titan when it was good, that'll be my shade throw. When it was good, this is scratching that itch, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of it.
I don't buy that Joshua's actually dead. But whatever the case is if this does end up being the ultimate fate of a character who is literally a phoenix and what a phoenix is known for.
Oh, good point.
But Joshua's transformation through strife sequence, favorite part of this prologue.
X-Men, you just brought up X-Men.
Dude, I don't usually connect with child characters unless it's something like Stranger Things where that's the main group. But usually I'm like, oh, because it's so easy for it to go wrong. You get a corny child actor or something, it just falls on its face. But I just explained, I love the archetype of the kingdom under siege, the king dying, being murdered, right after you have some heartwarming scenes with him. That'll get me every time and make me root for your heroes. And so Joshua being there, having just seen his dad killed, and it just it's a child. We've seen him, he's sickly, total hopeless moment. I 100% got sucked in and bought in. We were cracking jokes the whole stream. I shut the hell up and I watched this scene just happen. This is, I'm sold. This was my favorite moment of the whole prologue. I'm like, okay, you've convinced me you're doing your fantasy well. You convinced me you're doing your R rating, M for mature rating quite well. I'm into it. It's not corny. Now, remind me that I'm still here in Final Fantasy land. Show me some truly fantastic, over the top, anime inspired magical action, and they 100% delivered. Also, if you're out there wondering, like, should I bother with it? Will I leave satisfied? Yes.
It's the opening chapter.
Yeah, much like Final Fantasy XIV, I feel like there's a satisfying close of chapter at the end of this prologue. So if you're worried, like, if you're going to want more, I do want more. But I also feel like I just experienced a nice, short, introductory story to the world of Final Fantasy XVI. So I'm leaving really satisfied.